Get ready for 2 hours of hard-hitting football talk, straight from their jocks about the jocks. It's Football on the Know with Jim and Joe.
What they say, it's not the X's and the O's, it's the Jimmies and the Joes.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Football on the Know. I am Jim McPhee, and of course, right there in the studio is Mr. Joe DeCapita.
What's going on, Autos? Welcome back for another edition of Football on the Know show. Thank you for joining us. We have some interesting things to talk about, much like last week where we kind of went over the AFC conference. We gave you our odd man out off of each team. When it's all said and done, some of the guys that we expect, they may be surprises, or maybe they're like not so much surprises, but we picked one player from each team that we definitely think is going to be ending on the cut list by when it's all said and done at the end of August.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to do that. Check them out at Grumblings Media, and you can see it all there, on the Blindside Blitz, the other show that we do. So all those lists are there. It's a lot of fun. This week, we decided to take a look at some of the teams that finished towards the end or the bottom of the pack last year, and to see what changes they did, what additions they made, subtractions, draft picks too on top of it, to see that potentially if this year, I call it here last year's trash, this year's treasure. See if somebody can turn that trash into some treasure, at least this season, like we saw kind of like with what the Washington Commanders did last year, with things that they did in the offseason, but then mainly in the draft and drafting Daniels here. So that was one of the teams that would probably be equal to what we're talking about here from last year. So now this year, we're going to cover the same type of thing here. And let's get rocking and rolling, Joe, here. Let's get right into the first team we're going to talk about, and that's the New England Patriots. The Patriots finished 4-13 last year. Not very good. The offensive line was struggling here. Didn't have any good targets for Drake May as he gets the start. Didn't have a lot of time to throw, but then also, again, the wide receiver core, there was really none. You had to try and rely on your tight ends, and they were aging. Injuries on the defense too on top of it and stuff. So team was in shambles, but now they've got an all new head coach, new regime. They've made multiple additions to this team in free agency, including defensive tackle Milton Williams, Carlton Davis, Harold Landry, a big one here that they signed to a 3-year deal, $43.5 million. And Robert Spillane, your guy, you know him. I bet you would have liked to keep him over there in Vegas, but he moves on to the Patriots, and Morgan Moses too on top of it. So there's some additions that they made in free agency, Joe, that helped instantly jump them into preparing and getting this team turned around. But then also in the first round, they drafted offensive tackle Will Campbell. It's round 2, running back Travion Henderson, and wide receiver. They get a wide receiver there in Kyle Williams. And then also in the third round, they grabbed Jared Wilson here to a center, which they direly needed as well. So they attacked the offensive line and grab some more defensive pass rush weapons. And then also, again, now they've got somebody to protect for Drake May, which he didn't have any last season here. So, Joe, let's take a look at the Patriots here. And what do you think about them and their potential to go from last year's trash to this year's treasure?
So, I mean, you just already brought up about all the free agent signings on the defense. They filled a lot of holes that way, especially on the defensive side, bringing in some big-time names that they had. But really what the most critical side of the football was offense. They needed to kind of rebuild, restructure the offensive side of the ball. And we knew that they going into the offseason, they didn't really have any answers at wide. Offensive line was really putrid. It was absolutely terrible. They needed to address that heavily, and they did in this offseason. They bring in veteran center Garrett Bradbury, formerly of the Vikings. You already mentioned Morgan Moses to kind of lock down the right tackle spot, formerly of the Jets. They have their young stud in Mike Onwenu, who they really like at right guard. Cole Strange, still kind of that familiar face. And I know he's not the best guard out there, but again, he's going to have to do at least for one more year. And they bring in their pick in Will Campbell to lock down that left tackle spot, which was a major, major concern going into the offseason. They get their guy. Let's hope for the Patriots' sake that he's able to lock down that left tackle spot and be a Pro Bowler for them for years to come. But then your receiving core, and I would say kind of like a bare cupboard last year. There really wasn't an answer for Drake May or whoever played quarterback to throw the ball to. This year is going to be more to Kendrick Bourne, who's been there before, looking to kind of continue his stay with the team. Keyshawn Booty, he is kind of like a up and coming receiver for them, and they really do like him, along with guys like Jalen Polk, Demario Douglas. So guys that were already kind of solidified with the team in a sense, but also still developing. Those guys are going to be key contributors for them for this upcoming season. But then they go ahead and they add two wide receivers, one being very well known in Stephon Diggs, who's going to lock down that outside position for them, that
Mhm.
X factor, that playmaking ability on the outside. And they also bring in former Bill Mac Hollins, who's the gigantic 6'5", lanky, big haired wide receiver.
Barefooted wonder.
Yeah, barefoot guy. He hardly ever wears shoes. But this is going to be another guy that's going to end up becoming a favorite of Drake May, feeding him the ball, moving the chains with him. So I think that the Patriots have gone from a absolute dumpster fire to now. I know it's all on paper at the moment. We haven't seen them play yet. They haven't played a real game, but by going off of what the improvements that they've made, I feel like there is going to be a decent turnaround. I'm not going to say huge because again, a lot of factors are still in play. You still got to, wonder about Drake May and his development. He looked really good in his first year, but that's got to continue. Is he going to have, sophomore slumber or anything like that? Can he continue to grind, continue to develop? And then with all these new toys, these new shiny toys on defense and offense, can they gel? Can they create that chemistry really quickly in time for week one when it gets here? So I think the Patriots are on the upswing. I think that they've done a lot this offseason to kind of help turn this organization around. And it looks like they've made the necessary changes to do that. They might end up becoming, and I don't think they're gonna be above 500. I think they might just fall short of 500. Um, but, I
Mhm.
think that they are going in the right direction for sure.
Yeah, I mean, again, I like the changes they made. Picks in the draft, Mike Vrabel, the addition there, just even at head coach and his coaching staff. And I think with the way the division is, and with like the Jets, and the Dolphins, where I think there's a big question mark here for the Dolphins, especially with Tua and again, they're looking to get rid of Jalen Ramsey. Tyreek Hill is upset, and I still don't think they've even picked up a lot of great things to help fill the void that they had for that team. So I think they're going to take a step backwards, I think, this season. And so I think the Patriots definitely have a good opportunity to kind of take advantage of that and improve in this division, especially, and get out of that bottom of the barrel and probably give it back to the New York Football Jets potentially in this one. But we shall see again, because there's a lot of different questions going on. A lot of changeover. The Jets now have Justin Fields, so that's unexpected to see what's going to happen with them under new head coach too. But I don't know. I'm really thinking that Miami might fall from grace here and maybe find themselves down towards the bottom too as well. We'll see. But I think the Patriots, they definitely have a good opportunity to be one of those teams to kind of bounce back in this one after a horrific season that they're not really used to last year. But that's a transition when you're trying to get that quarterback, though, and have to bring him in first off. You know what I mean? So next, let's talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars and what they did here, Joe. Cut a bunch of guys, released the guys, Gabe Davis is the recent one. But again, Christian Kirk, receivers. So then they needed weapons to get guys around Trevor Lawrence, they needed help there on that side. I thought, again, when you looked at them in the draft, they're going to go defense too on top of it, which they did attack some of that as well. But Travis Hunter is the big one. They go and make that trade up there with the Cleveland Browns. They're able to get Travis Hunter, a versatile talent. And they also signed free agents like Naomi Brown too on top of it too. Robert Hainsey was another one too. So trying to improve what they were. And again, another team that finished terribly as well, and kind of underwhelming. Again, I thought they were going to do something to kind of bounce back. When you asked, them with Doug Peterson to kind of respond after a down year where they made the playoffs like right away. It was one of those teams that you're like, all right, they made the playoffs. They can maybe do something here. And since then, just got worse and worse. And even though they tried to, get weapons for him and make changes, it didn't really happen. And they also, were getting, Trevor Lawrence banged up. So, I mean, he really was playing injured for most of the season last year too. A couple of other big signings that they had, Eric Murray too at safety, Jordan Lewis, cornerback. But the Jacksonville Jaguars, what do you think about them, Joe, and what they've done here in this offseason, their potential to kind of bounce back
I
this
think
season?
another big signing for them is Patrick McCarry, formerly of the Ravens, that they've really gone out there and tried to solidify as much as possible this offensive line because let's face it, Trevor Lawrence has not looked good since he's signed that big contract for the Jaguars. He hasn't been living up to his name. He hasn't been living up to his draft pick. It's time to really find out what this guy is capable of. And in order to do that, they had to go out and get weapons. They made the move and they get Travis Hunter and lock him in to be what they're hoping to be a stellar receiver for them. To team him up with Brian Thomas Jr., that could be a nice duo for Trevor Lawrence to distribute the football to. And then, of course, he's still going to have his guy Travis Etienne. He's still going to have Tank Bigsby there. Another kind of underrated guy that they ended up drafting in the fourth round was, Bashul Tutin, who I really think this kid is electrifying, has tremendous speed. So I'm curious to see what they do with him when the week one rolls around. But overall, the defense was already kind of solidified. They've added a couple more pieces there to get even more strength there, and then on offense, this is where it's going to be. This is where it's got to be make up some ground here. So for the Jaguars to kind of make that move and become that competitive team for week one, they're gonna have to get on the same page, and it's gonna start with Trevor Lawrence. Everything is gonna be predicated with him. Does he take a step forward or not? So, I mean, so far we just haven't seen him, rise up and be the guy, be the leader that they were hoping for. And I got to be honest, I just don't have a lot of confidence in Trevor Lawrence, regardless of the weapons that he's going to have or anything. So again, you're going through another kind of change with this organization, hoping that this is going to be different with this new leadership, in the front office and whatnot. So,
Mhm.
again, I say temper expectations. I don't think they're going to make any big, massive moves or anything. They're not going to be competing for the division. I don't think that's going to happen. But I do think they could possibly, if they get everything just right, they could possibly make a wild card, possibly. But then again, I just don't think it's likely.
Yeah, I mean, what's good for them, what they have going for them, I think, is the fact that they're in the same division with the Titans, who again didn't finish very well. They're going to be probably starting a rookie quarterback. You've got the Colts there too as well. Anthony Richardson, still question marks. We're not solid on him, even though he did bounce back after being benched last season, but will it continue? And the Houston Texans, which they've kind of dominated that division for the last couple of
Mhm.
years here and had no real competition just because of the question marks at quarterback for a bunch of these teams. So there's room for improvement. You know what I mean? So, I mean, if any of these other teams don't really pan out as well, Jacksonville has an open door. But like you said, I would, hinder or, stipend expectations here. It's probably going to be a bumpy road. The good thing is they do have some good talent there, and the fact that they were able to get Travis Hunter here in the draft will help them on both sides of the ball. And again, a great elite talent here at wide receiver for Trevor Lawrence that he's desperately needed that he's never really had there. So hopefully that will, if anything, help him improve. Just because we've seen other quarterbacks struggle when they don't have the talent around them, and if you at least would have that star guy, you can still elevate your game by keep dishing him the ball. If he's open, yeah, he's always open. Just go. I mean, do it.
We'll
Um,
see
but
because there's one
again,
thing for
the
sure
Jacksonville Jaguars
that
are going to be a rough one.
Travis Hunter really
Mhm.
hasn't experienced the physicality that is the NFL. So we're going to see if he can turn
Mhm.
into that guy. He's not the biggest guy in the
That's
world.
true.
He's 188 pounds at wide receiver. If a big physical corner gets his hands on him, he might not get off the line. So he's very quick. He's elite traits as far as speed and quickness. But again, when you start to get to the big leagues like he is now, where it's way more physically demanding, now we're going to really see if he can be that blue chip player. We already know Brian Thomas Jr. has proved it last year. We'll see if Travis Hunter can do the same.
Yeah, and that's the one thing he has probably in evaluation probably lacked is getting off the press. So like you said, physicality, get there on the line on him. Can he get by it? So that's key. But yeah, Jacksonville, like I said, they've got opportunity, but I'm along with you too. I don't expect a whole lot here. All right, so moving on to your Las Vegas Raiders again. They've finished, I think, around with 4 wins too. And again, new leadership here. Pete Carroll comes in. You got Tom Brady involved with everything there too as well. In the draft, they get running back stud Ashton Genty too at the number 1, their first round pick. So that's big for their offense. And we talked about this and what a difference maker this guy is and how that can kind of be the base of your offense. And that will help with this quarterback situation here. You go and grab Geno Smith, who still looked good for the past seasons too with the Seattle Seahawks. So you're hoping that he can continue on. That was a big addition for them because basically, they've been able to do some things. It's just that they haven't had consistent quarterback play, whether it be the quarterback himself, but then injuries. I mean, they've had to start, second, third quarterback sometimes here due to injury, but then also with, you know, Antonio Pierce moving guys in and out and changing his mind who's going to start or sit or whatever didn't help either. So the Las Vegas Raiders, Joe, talk about some of the additions that they've made or some of the subtractions too as
So the
well.
thing about Pierce is it was very odd. Like I don't think the guy really had control of the team like it was pointed out to be. I think he was pretty much being like a used as a puppet in a sense to where that's where you started to notice like musical chairs with the quarterback. Minshew, was kind of going in for 1 week, and then the next week they had Aiden O'Connell in there, and then the week out 2 weeks later they switch it back. So it was really strange. Like you see that in college football because you can get away with it, but at the NFL level, it doesn't make any sense to kind of keep switching your quarterbacks in and out. So I mean, there was a lot of poor decision making all stemming up from the front office and trickling down. So in-game decision making for Antonio Pierce, that's where like he was really put in question. Can he really handle the job? Did he deserve to get the job? And honestly, I don't think he took the necessary steps to become a head coach. It was more like just a kind of like a fast track, quick jerk reaction decision to make him the head coach because the players wanted it, and it turned into a disaster. So the Raiders look this season, they bring in a guy that by all accounts across, throughout the NFL circles, all say that John Spytek as a GM is a home run, a guy who knows talent, a guy who knows how to run a team, and he's learned under one of the greats like Jason Light in Tampa. So there's high hopes for John Spytek to continue to build this team. And then they bring in Pete Carroll, a guy who has Super Bowl experience, has been a head coach that has started from the ground up and has built a team, knows what it takes. So it seems right now, anyways, as we speak, that they're in good hands as far as running the organization. And then it turns into the roster where they had their hands full this offseason. They had a lot of holes. They don't have all the answers just yet, but they've had a good start with free agency and the draft. You brought up Ashton Genty. I mean, that's the talk of the town in Vegas. Now that they got Genty,
Mhm.
they got their running back. They're going to utilize him very heavily, whether it be running the ball or even receiving. Pete Carroll
Hmm.
loves to run the football, loves that kind of physical brand of football. So look for that to be utilized. Chip Kelly, from the Ohio State Buckeyes, the offensive guru, they call him, a guy who's very creative with this offense. Now you look at this offense with Geno Smith pulling off a trade that honestly I thought it was a steal. You only give up a third round pick basically for a starting caliber quarterback. Um, that seems like a home run for the Raiders right now. But they also go ahead and, along with the players that were already in place, Jacoby Myers, the offensive line is actually better than people give it credit for. It's pretty solid, but they knew they had to reinvest in that position group. They went heavy in the draft, adding adding players that could eventually be starters, and maybe who knows, maybe during training camp, some of these guys push these veterans out of their jobs. Jack Besh is another big favorite of the Raiders, a guy that's a very big, strong, physical wide receiver. Looks like he's going to start right away, and rightfully so. And then they have some more sleeper type of candidates that they took a little bit later in the draft that they are hoping they can capitalize on that talent to be a major factors in this upcoming season. And then the defense. Problem with the defense last year is honestly, injuries. I know that's kind of
Hmm.
man, they basically only had Max Crosby out there, and even he was injured all season, but he still played. Like,
Hmm.
he was trying to give it his all and trying to make up for the things that they've lost. Now they're getting back Christian Wilkins, pretty healthy. Crosby's coming back healthy, has had his surgeries, he's ready to go. And Malcolm Kuntz, who never even stepped foot on the field last year due to injury, he's returning as well. And they added a bunch of free agents to kind of fill in holes on the defensive side. A very familiar name, Devin White, formerly of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He finds his way there. Looks like at the moment anyway, he's penciled in as a starter. Landon Roberts, a guy who got plenty of playing time with the Steelers. He's also looking to kind of fill in where Robert Spillane left. And by all accounts, when you compare those two guys, it's almost a mirror image of how they
Hmm.
play. So maybe they found yet another gem in that position group. But then secondary is a huge, problem for them. Again, Jacorian Bennett, he's coming back off an injury to kind of fill in that void that they had last year. Jeremy Chin, Eric Stokes, and there's plenty of other players, but you can tell that there's been a lot of movement roster wise. There's been a lot of changes from top to bottom, coaching staff and otherwise, that it at least gives the Raiders fan base at least some optimism, at least some hope for this season. Not saying that they're going to turn it around and win off season and they're going to actually compete and go for the division. But at least with the quarterback now kind of solidified and the pieces that they were able to add, it makes a lot of sense to be optimistic for the Raiders, at least to be competitive this year and not kind of a team that other teams can walk all over.
All right, we've got our first comment in the house tonight. We got Ty Disco with us. Ty says play action Myers. That's a typo there. 1,250 and
What's up, Ty?
Genti 1,085. Gino 3,500, 29 and 15. So he's calling the numbers here. So that's look at that. So we'll see if that ends up coming to fruition here. So we'll find out. But he's calling his shot on this one for the Raiders. Yeah, I mean, I like a lot of the things that they did again with the additions, plus in the draft of what they could do. The only thing is, again, this is going to be a tough division to try and claw your way through. So that means they'll have to try and take out some of the other teams that they're going to be facing. Week one right away, they've got the Patriots. So that's one of those teams that they could face and potentially scratch out a win depending on how the Patriots play. And that'll be a big one probably for Tom Brady to return to and meet up with Mike Vrabel here in New England. So I wonder if there's going to be a little bit of a show there for those guys there. Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see how it turns out. Again, with what happened with the last season, how you kind of had high hopes with what carried on from the season prior with interim head coach. And now what you
Didn't
have now
I didn't
here,
have high hopes.
well, some people, they're like, we're hoping something they can
I didn't
continue.
have high hopes.
Uh,
Not when you have Gardner
oh
Minshew as your
yeah,
starter.
that's true too.
No,
That is true too. So yeah,
no,
it's a total change around
no
here.
game.
So I'm excited to check it out for you. But again, like you said, I would limit expectations, see what you could do here. I think it's a start for them to turn it around. I just don't think, excuse me, they're going to be one of those trash to treasure teams this year. All right, so that brings on,
Man, you might be surprised,
yeah,
Jim. Might be
we'll
surprised.
see. Like I said, I always count Geno Smith out, and he always surprises me, anyways. Right? So who knows? Maybe they will, and I'll be happy. I'll be happy for you. Absolutely, Joe. I mean, we've both watched our teams be so bad for so long here. I'm hoping for one of us to have some kind of good season here. So, and that brings on
Forget one of us. I hope both of us. I hope both our teams actually do well.
yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. That would be absolutely stupendous here. So that brings on the New York Football Giants, Joe. My team again. It looks like again we were hoping to try and get things going. We did make the playoffs one season here with Dable and Daniel Jones, but then they got rid of him last season, and now they draft Jackson Dart here in the this year's draft, along with getting Abdul Carter. They've got Alexander too, Darius Alexander. They drafted Cam Scadaboo, who's added to the team too. So you got a ground and pound running attack guy too to add on to this squad. And they cut a lot of guys that didn't really need anymore. I mean, I was tired of seeing Dory Jackson being part of the team and things like that. I like the weapons or the things they grabbed, the pieces that they grabbed in the offseason too to get started right before the draft. And Paulson Adebo, cornerback, from the Saints, signing him on here, I think it was great. Roy Robertson Harris, even too, at D tackle. And I was looking at Chauncey Golston. I like that pick too that they grabbed, formerly of the Cowboys, because he was a pretty good player for them too. So I liked the fit that they had. And that was Abdul Carter. So now it's a loaded up defensive line here where they've got options, especially with Thibodeau here. And also grabbing Javon Holland too at the safety position too. So locking that in too, to where we've had guys that are starting that really at anywhere else aren't probably going to be a starter. So let's be honest with that. And then grabbing some more talent here too. I wish they were able to get a little more at wide receiver, but we'll make do too. And again, it's still an option out there that, they're meeting with Gabe Davis, and that potentially Gabe Davis could join the team. And I think that would be a good, two guy kind of for them, because Darius Slayton, he's up and down. I mean, I can't count on him. Again, a guy who's drafted late too, you're not expecting a whole lot. So it was a nice story for what happened with him anyways. But, he's not expected to be, a number two anywhere. And you saw inconsistent play, and especially in the playoffs, to where, he was making some good plays, but then wide open ones, he dropped a wide open first down that would have kept the drive going. That was a game-winning drive that killed it for you. And that's the thing. And you shouldn't really expect that out of that guy because who he is and where you drafted him. I was, looking forward to seeing them kind of, release him, let him go into free agency, but they brought him back anyways. So I was like, oh boy. But
Yeah, I mean,
the Giants,
the
Joe.
Giants did defensively, anyways, is they filled. They only had a few holes to fill, and they did a great job on doing that and actually building depth beyond that. So, I mean, for me, like you mentioned, Roy Robertson Harrison, uh, I think the draft pick in the third round, Darius Alexander is going to be an absolute stud for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Absolute stud. This guy's going to end up starting or at least getting a heavy rotation on the football field. A D tackle that still needs to develop coming from, Toledo and whatnot. But man, his acceleration, his burst, his strength, the size that he has, it's uncanny. So I can't wait to see what he can do, especially alongside a guy like Sexy Dexy. It's going to be a sight to behold. Yeah, and you got all these pass rushers now: Abdul
Mm-hmm.
Carter, Brian Burns, and then that kicks Kayvon Thibodeau as a rotational piece now. A
Yeah.
guy who 2 years ago had double-digit sacks and then did nothing last year due to injury and then just not being productive. Now he's your backup where maybe that's the best thing for him. Giants did exercise the 5th-year option on him to keep him another season, and I think it's all predicated because they want him to further develop, and now that they have Abdul Carter there, there's no rush for him to stay out there on the football field. Now you gotta earn your spot on the football field, so, and obviously with Paulson Adebo, like you said, Javon Holland, key cogs to rebuilding this defense, to solidifying the holes that they once had. And now you're looking at a defense that's going to be a defense that I feel like nobody in the NFC East division is going to really look forward to going up against, because that defense got strong and was already being a little bit nuisance to opposing offenses. So Jim's right. When you look at the offense, the little lackluster in the receiving core, thought they were really going to kind of concentrate on that and fill out with the arsenal with more weaponry, but by getting they still have Malik Neighbors. Everybody knows that. It was surprising that Darius Slayton returned to the Giants. I thought that they would go a different direction via free agency with wide receivers, and some of the guys that are actually available currently are 10 times better than Slayton. So, if they were to add maybe right before training camp an Amari Cooper or even Gabe Davis, like Jim you mentioned just seconds ago, because
Hmm.
honestly, I definitely could see Gabe Davis signing in a next couple of days, because it just makes too much sense to do it. And then if you were to add on top of that one of these other veteran wide receivers to kind of solidify this receiving core, it really would make it so much stronger. Look for that to maybe possibly happen as we get approach training camp. And a Giants team that is hoping that their offensive line can stay healthy, can live up to expectations, and even if somebody tends to slip a little bit, they do have some guys behind them as backups at the moment. Greg Van Roten has been good for the Giants at guard, but they drafted in the 5th round Marcus Mbao, who a lot of people expect him to eventually, in a way, become a starter for them. And then Aaron Stinney from Tampa Bay, a former starter at left guard who could really kind of slide into that role if need be. So I feel like overall, and you mentioned before the quarterbacks that were added. Everybody knows Russell Wilson and Winston is there. Cam Scadaboo. I
Hmm.
love how they filled out the running back room. To me, this is going to be very exciting for Giants fans to watch the games and see how this three-headed to two-headed combination that they're gonna utilize, was Cam Scadaboo, Tyrone Tracy Jr., and name the next player after that. I don't know if Singletary will be there or not, but it's possible that he is, but he'll be on the back burner a little bit. I really expect this Giants team to make a big step forward this year, because they have to, because
Yeah.
they've been the laughing stock of the NFC East for far too long now, and they haven't had answers. It seems like now this Giants team is finally getting molded and shaped into the vision of Brian Daboll. Finally, we might actually see a Brian Daboll led NFL football team in week 1, and I can't wait.
Yeah, yeah, me neither, Joe. Precisely. I mean, they've been the laughing stock probably of the NFL too, because again, recently we talked about it last week when we had our Giants show with Lindsey Whites, and we brought up the fact that when they put the power rankings out for this upcoming season, just about every media spot had them near the end, if not the last team. So they've been like the laughing stock. They have second to worst schedule this coming year, so they're going to face some real tough teams here, and so it's going to be adversity they're going to have to battle here. But again, changes do need to happen, because if it doesn't, that Brian Dable or Joe Shane are going to be probably out the door again. So
Which is
because
unfortunate.
ownership, yeah, I know, because again, like you said, now you've got really kind of 1 year to see what you got with the quarterbacks that you really wanted.
And that's the other
um
thing too, is that they did draft
mhm.
Jackson Dart. They traded up to the
Yeah,
1st round to draft Jackson Dart, the future of the quarterback. In the vision of Brian Daboll, that's what he wants his
right.
quarterback to look like. And
Hmm.
that's what he was really excited about when they actually took him. They took his guy, and now going forward, if you let's just say in the very end, if you decide to move on from Brian Daboll and Joe Shane, you're basically saying, I don't care if they drafted a quarterback. now we just want a new regime in place, and then you might have to kind of rethink everything all over again. Jackson Dart
Hmm.
might not fit into the vision of the next regime put in
Right.
place. So
Right. Then you're just
you
redoing
might
it all
be
over
losing
again.
ground more than gaining if they make that decision. I hope for Giants fans, I hope for the coaching staff that no matter what happens, they give Dayball and Joe Shane one more year, even if it doesn't look good this season.
Hmm. Yeah, so I mean, I've got high hopes. I'm hoping I'm nowhere near what Lindsay was saying. Like she was thinking maybe 10 wins, but I don't see that at all, especially with a division this tight. This division is probably one of the better ones, and that's why it ends up being so tight with some of these teams. You know what I mean? If it's not for injuries, though, to change it around. But look at what Washington had did. Look at the Eagles now winning another Super Bowl in just a few years, and they didn't get any worse. They got better. So it's going to be tough here. But I'm looking for a team that can at least kind of compete with some of these guys too, to where some of the divisional teams that they've played, just get blown out. They get blown out, not even around. So I think it's one of those teams that can kind of turn around. As far as if you're thinking trash treasure, I don't think they're going to be at the bottom. I'm thinking they're going to be a little hidden treasure, though. I think that's going to be a little bit of a bright spot and a little better, at least for Giants fans, of what it's been the last couple seasons.
Yes, because now you have a legitimate veteran quarterback in place
Right.
that can make
Hmm.
those throws, that can make the
That's a
plays.
big difference.
And the fact that the Giants have surrounded Russell Wilson with the guy like Malik Neighbors, with guys like Wendell Robinson, who I really do like, but I'd like to see them add another veteran there on top of what they already have. But you also have a nice backfield, a offensive line. So it looks like the Giants are on the way up. And how far up they could climb, we'll wait until the season gets here, but I don't think they're gonna, go above, in double digit wins or anything like that. But I do think this is a team that could scrape by and maybe even surprise some teams week in and week out to where they're kind of hanging around, but and they end up scratching away a couple of more wins than anticipated and surprising some teams.
Yeah, that's right, Joe. Yeah, we'll see. Moving on, but now we've got two more teams here to cover. Then we're going to get on to some of the schedule that's being released, as we speak. But the Cleveland Browns, again, they were finishing towards the bottom of the barrel too, as well, picking second overall, but then traded out. And I think for them, bringing back, Miles Garrett was big for them in that defensive side here too. But again, he was like, oh, I want to go somewhere else. I want to win, blah, blah, blah. But then all of a sudden they ponied up the money. And then there it is. He's still there, but they're still paying Deshaun Watson to be injured. They have a loaded quarterback room. And again, no more Nick Chubb there. So, I mean, there's a lot of questions here, I think, under Kevin Stefanski and this regime and what Cleveland's going to do, because they've had a really good defense and they've had offensive weapons there. They just couldn't get it going here, and the lack of good quarterback play. And for a guy that should be even hot in the hot seat too, as well, which I think this season he definitely is. I think his seat is even hotter than Brian Daboll's seat, and it's Kevin Stefanski, because he's given this team a while ago, has had good quarterbacks, good weapons, and hasn't done anything with it. He had Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield's over there with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and looking like an all-star. So I think that's one of the teams here with these guys to see whether Kevin Stefanski would keep his job after this one. But what do you think about the Cleveland Browns and
I
what they're
I
able to do?
guarantee you this, though, Kevin Stefanski is probably one of the best quarterback coaches in the NFL. He's definitely well respected, can work with any quarterback and make them step their game up. That's why they ended up go ahead and they took Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd round, and they double dipped there in that position and taking Shador Sanders, who slid to the 5th round. So, with that kind of mindset and the investment that they've made at that quarterback position, those young, bright quarterbacks are gonna be under the tutelage of Kevin Stefanski, and it seems like he's gonna be there longer than maybe even Cleveland fans think. He's gonna be building this program with these young quarterbacks, and he's gonna have a little bit more grace period. The hot seat, I don't think, is gonna be that hot this year because of the quarterback investment and the fact that he needs time to work with these guys. So, um, you look at this team overall, and this team only 2 to 3 years ago was a playoff caliber team.
Mhm.
And when you look at the roster now, yeah, some things have changed, but pretty much the core of the team is still there. Obviously Baker Mayfield's no longer there, and there's some guys that also left. But when you look at the team now, I think as long as they solidified the quarterback play, which now you have a vet in Joe Flacco, who's right now penciled in as the starter, wouldn't surprise me if one of these younger prospects outplay and earn that starting position as we get closer to training camp, as we go through uh as we go through the month of August. And that's going to be interesting to watch. It's going to be the more one of the teams that are more compelling in terms of the quarterback competition. It's going to be a sight to behold. But overall, I mean, their offensive line's pretty solid still. They're a little weak at receiver.
Mhm.
Kind of surprised that they didn't utilize one of those draft picks on a wide receiver, or even bring in one of these free agent wide receivers after the draft yet. So maybe they address that position a little bit more as we get closer to August. But Cedric Tillman's not scaring anybody. Jamari Thrash ain't scaring nobody week to week. David Bell, who's kind of been there already, hasn't really done much, and so on and so forth. The only real answer is Jerry Judy. So they have to address that position for sure before we get to week 1 here. But overall, I think that their offense is going to be better than last year. Deshaun Watson, what's going to happen with him? I think honestly, he's going to go on the IR for the year. They're going to just stash him away for this year. They're going to wait till next year where they can move on from him financially, and maybe maybe a team will bring him in as a backup or something. But I think his time in Cleveland is fair to say it's definitely over with. Defensively, they did a good job in the draft. They drafted Carson Schweschinger from UCLA, who a lot of people really liked. Guy who's kind of instinctive, sideline to sideline type of linebacker. And wouldn't you know it, when they draft him, they must have known something ahead of time, because Jeremiah Owusu Koromoa is done for the season. So they basically drafted his replacement. And when he does come back, I don't know if there's a team for him to come back to, because they're not gonna pay him the money to keep him as a backup. So it's gonna be interesting to see how they handle that situation when it arises. But other than that, they've also added other position groups.
Mhm.
Mason Graham,
Mhm.
one of the biggest names in the draft.
Mhm.
They bring him in the first round to lock in that D tackle spot. So all in all, I think when you look at this roster from top to bottom, pretty solid, pretty well put together still. They sprinkle in some talent through the free agency and the draft. But I think this is one of those teams where, if I was to say Deshaun Watson was a starter still, I think that they're still going to suck.
Mm.
But the fact that they have veteran leadership with Joe Flacco, and if they're lucky enough, one of these younger quarterbacks step up and take the reins and win the job outright, that would be the you know, ultimate culmination of the draft for them. So uh, we'll see what happens in training camp, but I think that this Browns team is going to be one of those teams that surprises a lot of people, despite being in a very competitive division and a tough conference to play in.
Yeah, it's definitely a competitive division. It's gonna be tough. And again, question marks there with the Pittsburgh Steelers too, is what's going on with them too, on top of it all. But it is a rough mountain to climb too when you do have like the Cincinnati Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens there too as well. So we'll see. We'll see. They might be one of those teams. That's why we're thrown on here too. They finished towards the bottom of the barrel and made some additions, and we'll see if they're going to be one of those hidden treasures this coming season. All right, and finally now, the team that had the number 1 overall pick, the Tennessee Titans here, they go and get quarterback Cam Ward to hopefully again bring them back around, out of the depths to where Will Levis kind of put them back too as well. They invested in him, and he just shot himself in the foot multiple times last year, multiple pick sixes that ended games. I mean, if it wasn't even for some of those games like that, just turning around, maybe things would be a little bit different for them. But uh, had a couple of guys, Landry again moves on, but they did add some more talent to this team too. But they've got a little bit of a road to climb. And again, like I told you before when I was bringing up the Jacksonville Jaguars too, they do have some leeway though with the way that division is, because I think it's there's a bit of question marks between those teams underneath the Houston Texans. So there's room for improvement. And so I think it all depends on what happens with the quarterback room.
I really like their defense, honestly. Like
Mhm.
they bring in a couple of good, solid players. Cody Barton at linebacker, um, Draymond Jones from formerly the Broncos and the Seahawks. I think they filled holes with guys that can step in and play at a high level right away, along with some nice picks in the draft later on that that could easily push for a starting job or at least be the future of those positions. Offensively, this is where for Tennessee, this is going to be critical is if the offense can kind of gain ground and score points,
Mhm.
because that was the biggest flaw of them last year. Their defense was okay, it was pretty solid, kind of like average to above average. But again, they didn't have the players they do now. Now that they have a pretty solid defense, the offense has got to kind of pick it up in terms of production, pick it up in terms of scoring points, and they've done a lot of work on that side of the ball. They bring in left tackle Dan Moore from the
Mhm.
Pittsburgh Steelers to hopefully lock that left tackle position in. They bring in guys like Kevin Zeitler, who is at the end of his career, let's face it, but it's better than what they had there prior, which is kind of laughable to say. Um, Cam Ward is going to be the golden child right now. They're going to hope that he can kind of lock in that starting quarterback spot, be the answer, and prove to the Titans the reason why they took him one overall wasn't a fluke, that he is going to be able to lead this team and score points and help them out that way. The receiving core wasn't really that exciting to watch last year.
Mhm.
Calvin Ridley kind of disappeared off to the face of the earth for most of the season, and hopefully he can rejuvenize his career this season with the Tennessee Titans, get a little bit more involved along with some of these other additions. Tyler Lockett, a very familiar name to a lot of people in Seattle. He comes over to Tennessee to kind of help this team along. Van Jefferson, another kind of older vet at wide receiver. So you're noticing that they bring in a lot of free agents to kind of fill these major holes that are just kind of like stopgap players. They're only here for this year. They're going to move on from them next year, but they also have guys that are up and coming via draft. Shamir DK from Florida, who they drafted in the fourth round. This kid, I definitely think could end up earning a starting job when it's all said and done. I think he's going to be electrifying for them. I can't wait to see him on the football field. Alec Aominer from Stanford, a big physical wide receiver, kind of in the same eyesight as Treylon Burks when they drafted him, a guy who's big, physical, has speed. But we'll see if they end up getting the better version of Treylon Burks with Alec. Um, but overall, I think this is a very young team or unproven at least on offense. So I'm hoping that in when it's all said and done, that Cameron Ward can handle the spotlight. Cameron Ward can handle the playbook and handle the pressure that comes along with playing quarterback at the next level. If he's able to do that and they can put some points on the board, if they can get like 21 points on average per week, which is asking a lot of a rookie, but if they can do that, the defense can take care of the rest and keep these games low scoring and probably scrape out some extra wins here. Tennessee Titans, I don't kind of anticipate them turning it around all that much this year because of so much movement on the roster and the fact that they have a rookie quarterback coming in. Usually it doesn't spell instant success, especially if you're going to start him right away. So I don't expect this team, unfortunately, to kind of turn it around and become one of those treasured teams this season, but I think they're headed in the right direction at least.
Yeah, I mean, again, they've got some building to do. Brian Callahan there, so second year with them, and then yeah, Cam Ward. It all depends on what happens with them. And again, like you said, the defense, they really worked on that. Hopefully they can continue with that. That only helps, the offense on top of it too, and a young quarterback. So that's been the question for them all along. So yeah, there you go. There's the teams that finished towards the bottom of the barrel last year. Hopefully they can turn it around. When we looked at it and said, hey, maybe they could be that treasure. We'll look forward to this season to see if that comes true with some of them. And it should be pretty exciting. Joe, tell everybody here how they can catch more episodes just like this of Football on the No Show.
Real simple. Just head over to YouTube for us, hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up while you're there, share it to all your family and friends. Um, we are a growing channel. We want you guys to be part of all the know-it-alls out there, and continue to help support our channel. It'd be much appreciated. Listen, we are live. We want you guys to be involved in this show. Make sure you drop down in the comments any questions, any opinions about what we may talk about, or if there's something else that you want to talk about, feel free to do so. Drop it down in the comment section below.
All right. So that's going to bring up our next segment right now. Actively, again, the schedule is getting released everywhere. It's all over the internet, ahead of time. We've already heard some of them's released a little bit yesterday and stuff like that. So let's get into some of the games. Let us know in the comments, like Joe said, even too, if there's ones you want to talk about, or even big ones that you're excited to see for your team too, as well. But let's just highlight a few, kind of just bring them up a little bit here too. Right now, ultimately, I'm looking right now at week 1. And I think week 1 is going to be real exciting here, especially for Sunday Night Football. I think Sunday Night Football in the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens, I think that's a great one here. I mean, because 2 playoff contenders right here, expected to be, in the probably AFC Championship game or near there, battling out week 1 already. So one of these teams is already going to come out of the gate with a loss. Joe, what do you think about this matchup?
On paper, it sounds like an excellent matchup, right? Like, I think it's one of those, premier matchups that you, as a football fan, you love to watch and see who can better the other team. Like, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, pretty exciting stuff when you think about it. This could end up being one of the kind of like a foreshadowing, if you will, of possible playoff game that might be in the future. We know that the Bills have made it in the playoffs. The Baltimore Ravens have as well. Maybe this could be yet another matchup at the end of the year. So very intriguing to see how both teams come out against each other, especially being week 1. It's kind of like um, the first day of school. You're not really
Mhm.
sure what to expect because there might be some new students in the school. There might be, some new teachers or something like that. So it's definitely exciting to kick off the week with that matchup right there.
Yeah, definitely, Joe. And again, they've already announced that the Chargers are going to play on the 5th in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And now we found out that it is rival the Kansas City Chiefs. So that should be an exciting one there, too, for
Mhm.
Brazilians out there. One of the international, one of 6, I think, this season here of international games. And they've added 3 new markets, or at least cities, where they've got Berlin now is added, another one in Germany. Before, I think it was Hamburg they would play, and now they've got Berlin. They've added Madrid now, Spain. So we're going to see one there. Uh, and what was the other one? I can't remember. Oh yeah, that's right, Dublin, Ireland. That one's
Dublin.
going to be exciting, I think, too. I want to see how the Irish get down, because we've seen, that's the thing with these European games. It seems like these fans get all into it. Like, it's a whole different vibe. Like, when we go to, games out here, you got your rivals, and people are even yelling at each other and angry, and fights,
Mhm.
and people, and you see the crowd get into singing the songs on the, as the stadium music, and drinking and blah, blah, blah. In Germany, you see everybody with the tall boys and everything. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So I can imagine what Dublin's going to be like, Joe.
That's how. So it's a different crowd out there because of soccer. That's how they handle their soccer games. So it's going to be no different when they bring in another sport like that. And it's just a different way of how they do things out there. And it's awesome, really. Like, when you have even the rivalries out there are pretty violent. When you
Hmm.
have these other, soccer teams or football teams out there, you know, it can get pretty rough there too. So um, it's really exciting for them, especially loving the sport of American football to come to their country. It's an honor for them, and obviously they love every minute of it. That's why it's always packed. I mean, there's even watch parties in every single bar at every corner you can imagine. So they really get into it, and rightfully so, because it only happens like once a year, maybe for that particular country, where they get a real NFL game being played in front of their eyes. So, uh, pretty awesome experience, I can imagine. And it would be kind of like the same thing as if, one of these other countries that, end up bringing like rugby over here, and they have some of their big time matchups happen in the States. That would be freaking awesome to watch.
Yeah.
So it's a really special moment, and it's an amazing experience that I can only assume or guess what it really feels like because it's on a whole other level.
Yeah, absolutely, Joe. And like the NFL had said, we're going to see more of these. They're going to keep adding it. We've already known about the markets they've added. They've
Mhm.
added, the Arab Emirates too. So we're going to see them in the next couple of seasons, probably. One intriguing thing here with that Dublin game is that the Minnesota Vikings will play in that one and be the home team in that one, and then travel to London across just the pond a little bit here in the Hop Islands to the UK and play in London here against the Cleveland Browns. So they're going to be away for a couple weeks in a row here. So I'm interested to see what kind of toll that may, hold on this
That's gonna be
team
rough.
from being out there, especially. Again, if it's JJ McCarthy, that's the starter there, and his rookie season starting,
Mhm.
how that affects everybody here and them with the travel
Yeah, the
and things.
Vikings will end up being the first team ever in NFL history so far to go back-to-back international games. It's gonna be a rough road trip, I'll say that much. They're gonna be away from their families, away from our country for at least 3 weeks, almost damn near a month. So, I'm pretty sure they're not that excited about it, at least the players and coaches are, for being away from home that long. I don't know how that's gonna impact future games that happen internationally, but I think this is kind of like a trial run, unfortunately for the Vikings. Tag, you're it. We'll see how they feel as they're overseas, and when they return, what they really feel like.
Yeah, absolutely, Joe. I know one thing that's always kind of been a staple is the Mexico game, and this year at Week 11, they've got the Washington Commanders and the Miami Dolphins, and I've noticed too that, mainly it's been even the Vegas Raiders that would be there in playing that Mexico game, but now with this
Mhm.
open market they've done and now allowing other teams to put their mark or their stamp down there, we've seen more Miami Dolphins play down there. And this is another one where the Dolphins are being the home team against the Commanders. And that one could be an interesting one too, to where you see, uh, you know, Daniels here on display here with the Commanders and the Dolphins in Week 11. Who knows where these teams might lie when it comes down to getting in the hunt for the playoffs. So yeah, I mean, and besides that, with the international games though, some of the other ones, I mean, the Falcons and the Colts, in Berlin, I'm not intrigued in any of those ones. Jacksonville
No,
games, I don't care either. So a lot of them
I
don't
don't think
really
any of them are
matter.
really that exciting, to be honest.
Right, right. It's like maybe just that first one headlines it because I'm interested to see how the Chiefs play against the Chargers again here under year 2 under Jim Harbaugh in that offense. And again, they go running back in the draft again, so heavy on the running back. But they do have some more weapons for him too in the passing game. So I'm interested to see what the Chargers look like this year moving forward and who can
Yeah.
compete with the Chiefs this season in that division.
I think any
Um,
team that's physical is gonna end
mhm.
up giving the Chiefs, a hard time, like the Chargers. Chargers are now play that physical brand of football, and usually the Chiefs don't really like that. They like that finesse style. They like, the quick hits, the finesse type of throws over the top. So usually
Right,
offensively, they don't like playing physical defenses. So
right.
it's going to be a challenge, and the fact that they're an interdivision rival. So there's always that kind of little cherry on top. Another matchup that I'm very excited to see is in week 2. We're going to get to see a Super Bowl rematch with the Eagles and the Chiefs in Kansas City. Um, that's going to be a game that I'm circling to watch for because it's going to be one of those things where could be, you know, is it going to be where for the Chiefs to get redemption in this one? I know it's regular season, but you always want to beat that one team that beat you in the Super Bowl. So
Well,
that to
especially how
me,
they got embarrassed. They got
that
embarrassed in
that
that
to
game.
me is going to be a game to watch early on in this season.
Right. I agree. I mean, again, I think that's a game that, Travis Kelsey will want to perform in because, again, on how lousy he played in the Super Bowl, I feel like he's marked this one now on his calendar and said, hey, I need redemption against this team. I didn't look very good. I need to look a lot better against them. And like I said, they got blown out in that game. The
Yes,
added
right.
on points that they did before, like the Eagles just let their foot off the gas, like, all right, go ahead, score. We got this in the bag. We don't care.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Travis Kelce's never going
so,
to be the same.
mhm,
I don't think he's going to be a major impact this season once again. The writing's on the wall for him. It's over. Noah Gray's going to be the future for them. We'll
mhm,
look for him to kind of take more of a step forward for the Chiefs because he's just so much more dynamic than Travis Kelce is at this point.
mhm.
Uh, Same week, another matchup that I'm excited to see is you know Buccaneers and Texans. Buccaneers and Texans, not kind of like not a division rival whatsoever,
Right.
but I think this is going to be an intriguing matchup with Baker Mayfield, with CJ Stroud. Both teams kind of like the teams that we kind of expect to be playoff bound with all the additions that both of them have made. So I think that's going to be another intriguing
Right.
prime time type of game to kind of tune into.
Yeah, I like that one too. Again, I'm intrigued as well to see what that's going to do and how that's going to pan out again too. Because with those two teams, it could be anybody's ball game. You're not
Right.
sure. I mean, they're so evenly matched. I feel like that. It could be anybody on this one. So I think that's going to be a knockout, drag out game.
Yeah.
All right, what else do we got here on the docket? I know we've got Sunday
Uh,
night football games coming too.
Week 3 for
Hmm.
me, Lions at Baltimore Ravens. That's gonna be fun. That's gonna
Yeah.
be outdoors. The Lions typically play indoors, so I'm gonna wonder how they're gonna handle, being out in possibly the elements. Maybe it's raining, so, uh,
They
it's
didn't
gonna be
handle
interesting to
things well
see.
in the playoffs last season. I know that much. Jared Goff played like ass in the playoffs. So hopefully, again, they can kind of turn around here. And I think a lot of the Detroit Lions here, I think they're going to be under the microscope a little bit too to see what happens when you lose your defensive coordinator, you lose your offensive coordinator too. On top of this, see how they respond and see if they're still a big playoff contender. They got a lot of weapons. They still got great talent here too. So I mean, don't put that
That's what's
past
gonna
them.
save them right there.
So, so yeah, I think I can see that one being a big matchup here. Taking a look at Sunday night football games, they've got some good ones, and I think that's the one thing with Sunday nights. They don't really let you down ever. You know what I mean? I don't think like
Nah, I
Thursdays you'll
think they've let
always
us
see.
down.
Thursdays they normally have stinkers like nonstop. It's like they hate Amazon or something for some reason, but there's some good matchups here. Especially you got KC and Detroit in week 8. You've got the Lions and the Eagles week 11. Things like that. You've got Houston and Kansas City in week 14. So I think Houston kind of wants some redemption too for that playoff game for where a lot of people thought that the referees were in the Chiefs, pocket, you know what I'm saying? So it was just with
They
how
were.
many with how many penalties were thrown in that one. So they want some redemption on that one. So I think there's some good matchups here. And I think the intriguing thing about this and some stats that have been put out there, and I think Ari Myrov on Twitter had put it out there. He listed the amount of primetime games by team, and number one is the Kansas City Chiefs. They have 7 primetime games. Number 2 is the Dallas Cowboys. Now, what do you feel about that? Do you think again it's just that's America's team? Everybody still feels like, or that's Jerry Jones saying, these guys got to be on primetime,
It's not America's team. We need to drop that title. Stop
right?
calling them America's team because that ship has sailed.
It's
They're no
sailed,
longer
right?
America's team. It's Jerry's world. We're just living in it. This
Mhm.
is the thing. Jerry Jones holds a lot of power still at the NFL table, and he always seems to pull some strings to get his team put in a lot of primetime games. a lot of like spotlight, contests. So it doesn't surprise me that the Cowboys are there. I don't think it's the right decision. The Cowboys were not one of the premier and elite teams, and until they become that once again, I don't think you should reward them and put them in a lot of these primetime games.
Now, the teams that have 0 primetime games are Cleveland, Tennessee, and New Orleans. What about that? New Orleans getting shunned in the
It
playoff
makes
in the
sense now.
primetime games, right?
It makes sense now. They listen with the news coming out that Carr's not returning, really doesn't give the Saints a whole lot of hope and a big shot for them to kind of continue their winning ways and maybe being competitive, maybe kind of, edging out and winning the division. That it's not, it's not a foregone conclusion anymore that they have that, capability now. Now you got a couple of unproven quarterbacks that are going to vie for the starting job. Where does that lead your team? It starts with the quarterback, and unless you have a viable source there, you're not going to really have a competitive offense. So, really, maybe the NFL kind of looked at that before they, kind of stamped made the stamp of approval on the schedule and saying, you know what, we're just not going to have this team in any primetime games because more likely the outcome is that they get blown out. More likely is that they're just going to suck. They're not going to have a good record. So that's why you kind of see those three teams, Tennessee Titans. Again, we just talked about them on how
Mhm,
they're. It's a big question mark for the Titans this year. Do they
mhm.
have a decent squad? Yes. But they have a rookie quarterback leading the charge on offense that really doesn't spell too much success right away. You know what I mean? Throughout the history, unless you get Jaden Daniels, that like with Washington, that stuff
Mhm,
doesn't happen. That's fairy tale stuff, you know?
mhm.
So it's a rarity. So I mean, I think they looked at those three teams and said, you know what? More likely than not, out of these three teams, they're not going to give any kind of competitiveness week in and week out. And most likely, when it is time for them to play prime time, if we scheduled it that way, then it's going to be a dud. Nobody likes boring games.
And
Nobody
nobody
likes
does.
one-sided games, especially in
Mhm.
prime time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. All right, so let's move on to Thanksgiving Day. Thanksgiving Day schedule, like always, we're going to see the Lions. We're going to see the Cowboys there. They've added another team, another game later on a few years back. And this year, I think doesn't disappoint either. Whether again, I don't really like to watch the Cowboys ever and stuff, anyways, but we get to see Chiefs and Cowboys, and I think at least with that game, you can kind of that for me, that's a temperature gauge. Again, I want to see where Dallas kind of falls in this and where Kansas City is in this, in on the season and where they are, and kind of gauge what level they're on. How good are they? How good are the Cowboys? Kind of that litmus test, I guess, at that point. And the Lions and Green Bay Packers, I think that's going to be a showdown too, as well. Lions, a lot of offensive weapons, the defensive additions they made. Green Bay Packers again. Jordan Love needs to kind of step up here this season, kind of put the team on his shoulders here and move forward. And the last night or the night game of the triple header, the Cincinnati Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens, which is always a good game, always down to the wire. Will the Bengals find some way to screw it up again? Who knows? Just because again, they went all in on offense, and we're left here with Trey Hendrickson saying, "Hey, dude, what about me? We don't, sitting there holding the bag. Where's my money?" So there's something they still haven't figured out, and he's still disgruntled about.
Yeah, yeah.
But either way, those are all good matchups.
Yeah, and there's a ton more too, because I was just scrolling through the rest of the schedule. I didn't even
Mhm.
get to week 8 yet, and there's already a bunch of, like, good games, like Lions Buccaneers. That's gonna be an intriguing matchup to watch, so, uh, I think up and down, we'll have to wait and see week to week how everything is going to line up because obviously you can't predict right now
Right.
how each team's going to play, what the record's going to be as we get into the middle of the season. If they did it right and somehow, I don't know if they utilized AI, to kind of like suggest what teams are going to be good, what's going to be the better matchups. If they somehow nailed the schedule this year, whereas as the season progresses, every game is at least competitive, that'll be a home run for the NFL.
Yeah, and they had gotten close. I think last year was pretty close to that, to where there was a lot of playoff implications, at least with some of the games towards the end. So I thought that was very intriguing
Yeah,
when we
but
got
that's
down to it
always
last
like that
season.
at towards the end. I'm talking all the way through. Like,
Hmm.
you're not gonna have hopefully, you're not gonna have, like, one team that's playing at an ultimate high level and then another team that is just dog doo doo, and they just can't do anything against them. Like, those games are just boring, and they're just not even you can't even watch them.
Right, right. One thing I find intriguing too, as we wrap up here, is the Christmas games too. The fact that they've added more, and now the fact that teams weren't ever playing on Christmas. It was an NBA thing always. And now all of a sudden, we've got a couple, three of them now. Yeah, exactly.
3
So now you're
teams.
expecting all these players to play on Christmas Day, and so, which I get that. I mean, other players in other sports have had to do that, but now they're adding this on. They're telling these players that, hey, this is this contract you signed for
Mhm.
this and this, but then in addition, we're going to add another game. We're going to do this, and we're going to now you got to play on holidays. Now you got to play more international games, and stretching it thin to where I think when the next CBA comes up, there's going to be some serious negotiations here on this.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the critical things is at what point are we gonna slow down on this? Like, as far as Christmas goes, it's basically the NFL giving a big middle finger to the NBA saying, "We own Christmas now." It's no longer the NBA. And it's not going to stop there. International games seem to keep growing in terms of a list of other countries that we go to every year. It started off with maybe one or two, and now we're then it was 3 or 4, and now we're up to, like, 4, 6 or 7, different games
Hmm.
internationally, worldwide. I know that they've also had talks with Australia, they've had talks with China, they have talks with the Middle East. So, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
when's it going to stop? Because more and more every year, it seems like we keep growing that the amount of games we're sending overseas to other countries. That's gotta be, concerning at least to I think a lot of, like, at least the owners at some point, they're gonna be like, "Hey, this was all fun and games, but, now I'm getting a bunch of shit from the players, from the coaching staffs, like, they don't wanna go over there." Eventually the nostalgia is gonna wear off of this, for not so much for the fans that are overseas, but for the players, for the coaches that have to do all the traveling, that have to do all the preparation at a in a foreign land, and try to keep it as, you know, homebound as much as possible, as normal as possible. It becomes a taller task the longer and the more games that you kinda mount up over there. So I don't know what the end result is, because we even kind of talked about it in our other show last night about, well, when does it stop? Because is this gonna bleed into maybe a playoff game or 2? A championship game is now in the UK instead of being in the States,
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
if it is overseas, whatever country they select, then what is it going to be? Is it gonna be an exclusive thing like they've done before where it's gonna
Hmm.
be, "Oh, it's only on Amazon Prime." If you don't have Amazon Prime, you're screwed.
Hmm.
You're not gonna see the championship game. Like, so I just
Right.
hope that it's not gonna get to that level, but, it
Right.
seems like we keep expanding this, and it's like, well, why? Like, we don't need to. Why do we keep doing
Hmm.
this?
Right, right. And I think already that professional football has already kind of made its mark. The NFL talks about, hey, we want to be a global sport. There's seriously other leagues out there that play football, you know what I mean? American football in, other
Yeah.
countries. And then they have their own leagues. It's not like all of a sudden, hey, we've never seen this before. Hey, you ever see this? Let's go to this football game. American football. I've never heard of that. People know what it is. There's other leagues there. It's active. So it's like, and they know the NFL teams by now. I'm like, they seriously have internet over there. I mean, it's not like everybody's in the third world over there. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? So what are we doing here exactly? Except for kind of again stretching everything,
Mhm.
money and stuff like that. That's what it basically comes down to. But like I said, and like you just said too as well, I hope it doesn't come at the
Yeah.
expenditure of your fans that you already
Mhm.
have here. Because again, you're already stretching it with streaming services. Then now what's going to happen, because again, these games, they're a whole different time zone. So you're watching them, getting up early
Yeah.
in the morning to watch them and things like that. But if it's a playoff game or something like that too, now all of a sudden you're like, all right,
Mhm.
playoff implications, 9 teams in it in the playoffs, but now it's happening, this morning, or what it might be, or
Mhm.
this and that. Like, holy crap. Now I got to try to make that. I got work to do. I got other
Yeah,
stuff. So,
exactly.
and again, we're the diehard fans that have been here
Right.
forever. So,
Appreciate everybody for tuning in for our episode here. We went through a few teams that had 4 wins or lower. Basically, kind of given our synopsis on each team. Do we think they're going to turn it around this year? Whether it be high end, where they're going to just completely turn around and become a competitor, or are they going to just kind of maybe mildly, or just still stay the same and just be garbage. So, um, thanks for tuning in. Talked a little bit about the schedule too. It's going to be exciting because I feel like just by browsing over the schedule, it looks like a lot of good matchups, especially early on too, and then going into the midway. Can't wait for the season to start. I know we got a few more months to wait it out, but stick here with us. We're going to get you through this grind, getting you through the training camp process, the cut downs, all that good stuff. But make sure you tune in every single week. We're going to be back for your NFL talk again next week. Want you guys to be a part of it. For those of you that have still stuck with us up to this point, please, if you haven't done so already, head over to YouTube, hit that subscribe button for us, hit the thumbs up as well, share it to anybody that you know that loves NFL football talk, and we'll see you in the next one.
all right, sounds good. Thank you so much, everybody. Like Joe said, we'll see you in the next one. Can't wait to talk some more football.